The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HPS Healthcare webinar, Sanitation and Disinfecting Secrets. We are just going to hold here just for a couple more minutes. We have a lot of attendees still getting online. So we are just all going to pause, fill up your afternoon coffee cups, grab your water. We are going to start in about 2 minutes. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HPS Healthcare webinar, Sanitation and Disinfecting Secrets. My name is Patty Kozar. I'm Director of Member Development for HPS. So I will be hosting the webinar today, but our special guest, Eric Losey from US Chemical, will be the highlight of the show. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you along with the PowerPoint so that you can go back and reference any of the information. All of the participants are muted by me. I have the power, but I always like to mute myself too, just in case, to make sure I don't add any background noise. So go ahead and mute yourself also. That being said, we won't be able to hear you if you ask questions. So if you have a question, we ask that you use the chat function. We will be monitoring the chat and hope to get all your questions answered today. Our presentation will be approximately 30 minutes, which will leave us time to do so. But Eric has done this before with other groups and had lots of questions and ran out of time. Rest assured, if that happens to us, you will get your questions answered. We will be putting together a question and answer page for just that scenario. So let's get started. Can everybody see my screen? Eric, you're the only one not muted, so you tell me if you can see the screen. All right, thanks so much. Let me take a look here. All righty. So if you're on this webinar, most likely you know who HPS is, but just in case, here's the reminder. HPS is your member-owned and operated group purchasing organization. In the business of bringing our members value through our contract portfolio and value-added programs for over 71 years now. I want to highlight our vision and mission statements as they are the driving force of everything we do at HPS. So our vision, strengthening communities by helping our members fulfill their missions. At HPS, we have the unique honor of working with entire communities through serving everything from the local hospital to the senior living community, the school, the camp, the county feeding programs, and the local church. Bringing value to all these entities helps to strengthen the entire community. Our mission statement. We will help our members realize their goals and financial objectives by ensuring all HPS offerings are relevant and provide value. We really take this seriously. By listening to our members and through our member advisory committees, we strive to bring you contracts and programs that are relevant and valuable to you and your organization. Speaking of advisory committees, if you're not on one, contact your HPS representative and get on one. All right, let's get on to the agenda here. So, okay, don't worry. I know I've talked a little bit too much already, but I promise I'm almost done with item number 1 on this agenda. So as I mentioned, my name is Patty Kozar. I'm one of the many HPS representatives on the HPS team who are all ready, willing, and able to serve. Our special guest, Eric Losey, will be up next to educate us on sanitation and disinfecting secrets. We'll take some time after his presentation to answer a few questions. And then after that, I'm going to come back with just a few slides on HPS and all things COVID related we've been doing. Then we will let all you good people get back to what you do best, caring for your communities. So without further ado, let me introduce Eric Losey, Distribution Manager and Product Expert for US Chemical. Just give Eric and I 1 second here to flip the screen sharing over to him. Coming your way, Eric, as we speak.
Got it. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me. Can everyone see my screen? Can anyone see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, again, my name is Eric Losey with US Chemical. What we do is we manufacture and private label the Array brand of cleaning products, specifically for Gordon Food Service, a relationship that's been going better than, I believe, 60 to 65 years, and obviously that relationship extending to HPS as well. So what I'm doing here today is we're going to have a training, like was previously stated, about 30 to 40 minutes on returning to service in times of COVID-19. And really my hopes in this training is there's many things that we're going to try and tackle here. We're going to dispel a lot of myths. We're going to go through the do's and the don'ts of sanitizing versus disinfecting. And we're also going to try and do our best to give you some insight on what we see in the chemical industry on our side, what we see potentially changing, and even more importantly, not changing as we begin to open up a lot. As we begin,
Eric, just 1 moment. It looks like you're self-muting.
there we go. Okay, let's continue on. Sorry for that. Okay, so in the Array line, which is obviously the cleaning product line for Gordon Food Service, they actually have 9 different item codes that are registered with the EPA on their N list, and we're allowed to claim that these products kill COVID-19. Now, I have to say that a very specific way, because COVID-19 is obviously a very new strain of the human coronavirus, and the EPA really hasn't had much time to actually go through and individually certify these products. So that's not just with US Chemical, that's with all chemical manufacturers. EPA will eventually get to certifying each and every one of these products that are on the EPA's N list, but they're a little busy right now with a global pandemic. So for now, we are able to claim, which all manufacturers are able to do this, with specific disinfectants, claim that kill the human coronavirus. And here's the interesting part about this slide is, number one, you notice that all of these are all quaternary ammonium-based sanitizers and disinfectants. They're not chlorine-based, they're not accelerated hydrogen peroxide, iodine, acid. They're all quaternary ammonium-based products. We have 2 ready-to-use products in the TB Quat and also the aerosol disinfectant cleaner. All of the rest are actually concentrated products, and we'll be getting into that in just a little bit. One last point I want to make about this slide is with 2 of the concentrated products, that would be with a Quat Clean and also the Ultimate Sanitizer. Those products are what we call in the industry a dual-use quaternary ammonium product, which means that one dilution ratio, they're a sanitizer. For example, 1 ounce to 3.5 gallons. At a different dilution ratio, 1 ounce to 1 gallon, it is considered a disinfectant, and a disinfectant strong enough to kill COVID-19. And that's kind of the main takeaway, is that a sanitizer alone will not kill COVID-19. And it's important that you hear that I say a sanitizer alone. So we know that we can hand wash for 20 seconds and eradicate the virus, though a disinfectant is the only thing strong enough by itself as a chemical to clean it. We'll get into the proper procedures in sanitizing and pre-scrap, wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dry that most certainly will. So bottom line is this: only a disinfectant registered on the EPA's N list will be strong enough to kill COVID-19. Okay, QT40 test strips. Hopefully everyone on this call has used and continue to use the QT40 test strips for sanitizing testing. That would be either in a 3-compartment sink or even in a sandy pail or a ready-to-use spray bottle. QT40s go from 0 to 500, and albeit some sanitizers have a different range. Some are right at 200, some have a range like our ultimate sanitizer between 150 and 400. Anything over 400 is considered a disinfectant within reason. More on that later. But this is where we're going to use the QT40 test strips. So a little inside tip and a lot of things that we're noticing in the industry is that not just food service having a sanitizer, but we're also seeing that it's going to become mandatory for even food service facilities to have a registered disinfectant on site. Now, we're not just talking about environmental services having a disinfectant. Now having a food service facility or in that area a qualified disinfectant as well, whether it's concentrate or ready to use for those non-food contact surfaces in and around not only the kitchen, but also in the dining room. That being said, all disinfectants have a concentration and a parts per million set point, and that'll be listed on the bottle, both English and in Spanish. So that will range, for example, I believe Quat Clean at 1 ounce to 1 gallon is, I believe it's 700 parts per million. Well, obviously our QT40 test strips aren't going to go all the way up to 700. So now recently Gordon Food Service brought in a new item code, QT1000 test strips. And right there I've listed the item code, and again, that's a Gordon Food Service item code 783540. Here's one of the disappointing things when I learned about these QT1000 test strips coming online, is it would be just awesome if we could use the QT1000s for testing sanitizers at 200 parts per million, as well as disinfectants at a range that will vary between the products, but anywhere over 400 and 500 parts per million. Unfortunately, we can't, because the concentration of a sanitizer is just simply too thin to be measured accurately. We must continue to use the QT40 test strips for testing sanitizers. And again, that would be surface sanitizing in the kitchen and the dining room, as well as your 3-compartment sink. Now, I would recommend that everybody write that new item code down for the QT1000 test strips. I'm not saying you need to order a whole bunch. I believe they only come in a 1 count and they're just a couple of bucks. But have these ready in your desk drawer for if and when your health inspector is asking you to test the concentration of your disinfectant. And again, we'll get more into this here in a little bit, but QT1000s, they're going to become very, very important in the very near future. Okay, EPA efficacy reports, or what we in the industry lovingly call kill claims, and they're pretty important. Anytime that we, the manufacturer, or any manufacturer, develop a sanitizer or a disinfectant, we must submit that formulation to the EPA. The EPA tests it, and what comes back is what's called an efficacy report. And it basically tells us what microorganisms died and which ones didn't. So in this example here on the lower right-hand side, you'll see TB Quat, which is a ready-to-use product. Very popular because, unfortunately, it has a 2-minute kill claim for the human coronavirus or COVID-19. And I'll explain why I said unfortunately here in a minute. But the efficacy reports will show you all the viruses, bacteria, and fungi that it will claim that it will kill, and that's not up to us, that's up to the EPA. So we would get in a world of hurt if we adjusted this document in any way, and I'll be honest with you, we can't even change a period into a comma without getting in a ton of trouble. So this is basically an EPA document that we're able to put our logo on. That's pretty much it. Now, back to why I said it's unfortunate that this product has a 2-minute kill claim for COVID-19. When we sanitize, and we'll get into sanitizing more here in a little bit, we'll get into sanitizing here in a little bit, but you sanitize for 1 to 2 minutes. When we disinfect, we need a full 10 minutes of efficacy, and that's to kill all microorganisms. Listen, I'm a germaphobe. Everyone here is a germaphobe, at least a professional germaphobe, and it's very, very important. And COVID-19 has been top of mind for literally 6 months, and everyone's concerned about it. However, we cannot just cherry pick one microorganism over another. We have to be worried about all of them. So with TB Quat, ready to use, again, it's great that it kills human coronavirus in 2 minutes, kills HIV in 1 minute, but unfortunately hepatitis A doesn't die for another 8 minutes. So again, we're all concerned that we need to kill this virus, but we need to make sure that we're worried about all viruses. Think about every 2 years, some new virus is the big scare. We had the bird flu, we had MRSA, we had norovirus, we had H1N1. It seems to be about every year to year and a half, there's a new virus that everybody needs to be concerned about. Obviously, none bigger than the global pandemic that COVID-19 has brought us. However, nothing really on the surface changed. So while it's great, again, that this kills that virus in 2 minutes, we're still worried about all of them. So I'd like for everyone to take a minute and really kind of calm down and relax about trying to find that one magic product that's going to do everything. It's going to clean, it's going to sanitize, it's going to disinfect, it's going to kill MRSA, noro, C. diff. Excuse me. If it was a value option before this global pandemic, it's a value option now. So we need to try to do our best to steer clear of ionizers, foggers, misters. I got a quote from a facility in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. It was 25 cents per square foot to disinfect their facility. In a hospital, they had to evacuate the wing every 2 to 4 hours. The individual had to wear a hazmat suit, and that was their lowest quote they got. And guys, I'm telling you, there wasn't even an efficacy for this product yet. So it's very, very important that the EPA is involved in all of your product decisions. And if at any point you need an efficacy report from Gordon Food Services array line, we can help support with that. Just reach out to us. Okay, so again, make sure that even when we're disinfecting non-food contact surfaces, we give it the full 10 minutes and not just the 2 minutes. Okay. So it might be kind of a rehash for a lot of folks, but we're going to talk about the differences between sanitizing and disinfecting. When we sanitize, it's really only going to be on food contact surfaces, and pretty much front of the house and back of the house, so it's the kitchen or the dining room. And when we do that, we're killing 99.9% of all the listed microorganisms that the EPA gives us on its efficacy report. And we're talking about more foodborne illnesses like salmonella, E. coli, streptococcus, things like that. Now, please understand, COVID-19 is not a foodborne illness, so we're not very worried about the food when it comes to COVID-19. We're more worried about the individuals, okay? So the EPA defines what a food contact surface is in 2 different ways, and I find this kind of interesting. They define what a food contact surface is in the kitchen as any surface the food can touch while in the process of making that food or that dish. So that includes the cutting board, the cutlery, the prep table, even a can opener is considered a food contact surface, as the blade of the opener comes into contact with the contents of that can as it's being opened and needs to be properly cleaned and sanitized after every single use. This is not new. This is part of the federal food code and has been for decades. So we really need to start really thinking about what is and what is not a food contact surface in the kitchens. Now, a dining room, they define it just a little bit differently. So instead of focusing so much on the food, now they're focusing on the individual eating it, either the patron or the student or whomever. So they define it as any surface a guest would touch while in the process of eating that meal. So again, not focused on the food, they're focused on the surroundings, and it goes well beyond the cups, the plates, the bowls, and silverware. Now we're talking about anything that you would touch while in the process of eating. The table, the chairs, any type of menu, even a salt and pepper shaker is considered a food contact surface. I mean, I eat a ton of French fries and I love my salt. And it is literally the last thing I touch before I begin to eat finger food. So even a salt and pepper shaker is considered a food contact surface. It needs to be cleaned and sanitized in between every use or before every single use. So that's very, very important. Okay, let's talk about disinfecting. And I think that's going to be a pretty new topic for a lot of the folks on this call. And so we're going to kind of dive into this. So when we sanitize, we're going to do that on food contact surfaces for roughly 1 to 2 minutes. When we disinfect, we're looking at non-food contact surfaces, and instead of killing 99.9, we're actually killing 99.999% of all listed microorganisms. So quite a bit more. It's not 100%. That's with sterilization in a hospital room. That's a little bit different. But because these surfaces and the products are meant to be around food contact surfaces where people are actually eating, a disinfectant is not. So we can get quite a bit more aggressive, not only with the concentration, but also with the cleaners that we actually put in it. You can only imagine there's just so much that we can put into a sanitizer before it's considered not safe for consumption. So a disinfectant, that's not the case. And now we can go after some of the tougher buggers like MRSA, Noro, and unfortunately the human coronavirus. So again, human coronavirus not being a food contact surface and can only be killed with a registered disinfectant alone. As far as the chemistry is concerned, we can't use a disinfectant on food contact surfaces. It is what we would call a chemical cross-contamination, and it can lead to a lot of people getting really, really sick. Now, don't everybody panic. There's a way through this, but we need to make sure that we continue to follow the federal food code. It's very, very important from here moving forward. So when we disinfect non-food contact surfaces, we're really just looking at the commonly touched areas. So restrooms and common touch points, doorknobs, light switches, faucets, sinks and rounds, toilets, urinals, things of that nature. Believe it or not, one of the most bacteria-ridden surfaces in any facility is actually the soap dispenser. So for those of you who are actually using not using a hands-free soap dispenser, those buttons, they need to be disinfected as well. I mean, literally, it's the last thing that you would touch before you get your hands clean. So I know I have a lot of customers that are asking me, you know, what else do I need to disinfect? Do we need to disinfect our floors in the bathrooms up and down the hallway? No, that is entirely, it's not necessary. We just need to worry about more of the common touch points. So the things that people are commonly touching. So that is kind of disinfecting in a nutshell. Okay, so as a reminder, we're going to sanitize all food contact surfaces, and we're going to do that both front and back of the house after every single use, either after every time you use that knife and cutting board, or every time you turn a table for either a guest or one of your students. It's going to have to be cleaned and sanitized before that next use. Disinfecting, a little bit different on all non-food contact surfaces, and we in the industry are seeing a lot of information that they're going to require those surfaces being disinfected every 2 to 4 hours. Stay tuned on that, but that's kind of what we're reading in a lot of our industry literature coming out from the EPA, CDC, and the WHO. That would be the World Health Organization. So one important note that I want to make about this slide. When I first started out, I talked about all 9 products in the array line through Gordon Food Service, and they were all quaternary ammonium based products. So there are a lot of different ways that we can sanitize and a lot of different ways we can disinfect. Again, we can use chlorine, accelerated hydrogen peroxide, iodine, bleach. We can use all kinds of different methods, but only quaternary ammonium has what's called a bacteriostatic effect. The bacterial static effect means that it will continue to kill microorganisms for another 24 hours. The reproductive rate in a lot of microorganisms is actually quite shocking and kind of disgusting if you think about it. So take salmonella, for example. It can double in population every 15 minutes. Double population every 15 minutes. So if I had 1 million bacteria on a plate and I sanitized it, which again only kills 99.9%, roughly 10 lived. With a reproductive rate of doubling in population every 15 minutes, within 4 hours, you're right back to that same 1 million. When you use quaternary ammonium products, with its bacteriostatic effect, it halts that reproductive rate. Chlorine does not do this. Accelerated hydrogen peroxide, which I'm a big fan of, does not do this. Iodine, acids, no other product base other than quaternary ammonium has what's called that bacteriostatic effect, and it's very, very important. That's why I'm in love with quat-based disinfectants and sanitizers, and the industry is in love with them as well, and we all hope that you are as well. So very, very important, make sure that we stick to, again, what worked before is going to work now. You're going to see very soon in the next couple of slides, almost in a repetitive nature, that we need to continue following the federal food code. We cannot recommend to anyone going against the federal food code until we hear any other direction from the CDC or the FDA on what we need to do inside of food service facilities. Rest assured, there's still more that we can do when it comes to killing COVID-19 in food service facilities. Even though you can't kill it with a sanitizer, we can all relax. There is a way through it. Okay, so let's talk about the sanitizing processes and procedures. And it really doesn't matter if you're talking about a dish machine, a 3-compartment sink, or surface sanitizing in a kitchen, or a cafeteria, or now to an extent the classrooms as well. We're still looking at the same 5 steps of pre-scrap, wash, rinse, sanitize for 1 to 2 minutes, and then finally air dry. So the EPA addresses the federal food code every couple of years. And then when they do that, they disseminate it down to the individual states, right? Power to the states. Now, the individual states can choose to make that federal food code stronger, but they cannot choose to make it weaker. My case in point is the state of Wisconsin. They got the federal food code many, many years ago. And they said, okay, we hear you, federal. 1 minute contact time for sanitizers. We think we're going to make it 2 minutes. And that's well within their rights. But what they can't do is choose to make it 30 seconds. So they can make that code stronger, but they can't make it weaker. And then furthermore, each local municipality can choose to make it stronger as well. So always stay up to speed on what your local health codes are, whether they change it to, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, what have you. This is my case in point. But bottom line is, again, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. If you're sanitizing it in a dish machine, 3-compartment sink, or on a surface, it's still the same 5 steps that have always been in the federal food code. And of course, no towel drying. Okay, let's talk about dish machines a little bit. And really here, we hope to dispel some myths and also tell you some things that we see changing and more importantly, not changing when it comes to dish machines. For those of you who have a low temp dish machine, we're still looking at a minimum water temperature of 120 degrees. We don't want to go below that. Really, we don't want to go above 135 degrees, only basically because we're using a chlorine sanitizer. I wish we could use a quaternary-based sanitizer, but unfortunately, if we put that product in there, it would foam up like an episode of I Love Lucy. So we have to use chlorine. So in a low-temp dish machine, the concentration still needs to remain between 50 and 100 parts per million. I have received no less than, I would say, 300 or 400 phone calls in the last couple of months with operators very, very, very concerned with COVID-19, and they want us to come in and adjust their low temp dish machines to 150, 200, just to make super certain that we're killing this virus. I'm telling you folks, we cannot do this. We will not do this. We cannot do this. It goes against the federal food code unless we are asked or told to do otherwise. It needs to remain at between 50 and 100 parts per million. So it's very important. One of the things that we do see changing is, I know maybe some of you already do this, and it is going to become mandatory soon down the road, and it is actually a log chart. So logging your test results on a regular basis, again, used to be kind of optional, and I saw a lot of hospitals, a lot of nursing homes doing it, but again, that was kind of voluntary to track. Now we're seeing very closely or clearly that that's going to become mandatory. I've put in a couple of links for those of you who get this recording later. These links go to low and high temp log charts that actually link up to Gordon Food Services NRC, or Nutritional Resource Center, who do a phenomenal job with these log charts and many other things, where you can actually download these and just print away. Not necessarily have to actually affix the test strip to the sheet of paper like I see a lot of people doing. After a couple of days or a week or so, those pretty much get get kind of faded out and they're almost useless, but some people still try to do that. All right, so that's low temp dish machines. Let's go to high temp. We are still looking today at a minimum rinse temperature of 180 degrees. And even that's not actually accurate. What's actually accurate is the surface plate temperature itself needs to breach 160 degrees for 7 seconds. That's actually the code. So that is why when you're standing in front of your dish machine with a health inspector and you show them the temperature gauge and it's getting over 180 degrees and they shrug their shoulders and say, I don't care. You can even go and get a waterproof thermal thermometer, run it through the dish machine and prove it's getting well over 180 degrees. They just don't care because that's not the code. The code has very little to do with the water. It has to, again, do with the plate surface temperature. That's why personally I'm a huge fan of the thermal labels. You affix them directly to the thickest plate you can find in the kitchen, put it on there, run it through. If the black square turns black, or excuse me, if the square turns black, you've reached 160 degrees on that plate surface for 7 seconds and you're good to go. So that's personally what I prefer. And then of course, using the high temp log charts, just like the low temp as well, is going to go a long way in starting that practice and that procedure now. So it becomes very customary, very common to do when it does actually become part of the code. Okay, so now let's talk about 3 compartment sinks, the processes and the procedures. So again, just like a dish machine, you're still looking at the same 5 steps: pre-scrap, wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dry. And I'm going to remind everyone, number 1, again, COVID-19 is not a foodborne illness. Okay, so we're not worried necessarily about the food. And I'm also going to remind everyone that if you're able to wash your hands for 20 seconds and eradicate COVID-19, pre-scrapping, washing, rinsing, and then applying sanitizer to that surface and allowing it to air dry for 60 seconds or 2 minutes in Wisconsin is going to do the same as well. It's going to go a very long way. So we need to continue to do so. Without exception, it needs to be an EPA registered sanitizer and at label dilution. We believe long gone are the days where you can just buy a gallon of bleach and throw it underneath the sink and call it good. So it will have to be a registered sanitizer at label dilution for your 3 compartment sink. And of course, I put in another link to a 3 compartment sink log for your testing as well. And they are actually developing another log for your disinfectants as well. I got word of that earlier this week, so we'll be able to get that out to everyone. Okay. Let's talk about kitchen surface sanitizing, the processes and procedures. And again, starting to sound like a broken record, but for good reason, because it's still a part of the federal food code. Pre-scrap, wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dry. Without exception, an EPA registered sanitizer, and it must be at label dilution. Now here's what I'm going to tell everyone. The federal food code says that we must use these 5 steps, and it goes against the federal food code to disinfect a food contact surface. And everyone is concerned about COVID-19, and for good reason. We have ourselves, we're concerned, parents are concerned, students are concerned, our guests are concerned. You can disinfect a food contact surface. It does not get called out in the food code, but you can do it. You can disinfect for 10 minutes. Then you have to rinse it thoroughly with fresh potable water. It's a process that takes roughly 3 to 15 minutes to accomplish. When we know that the 3 to 4 minutes that it takes to turn a table in pre-scrap, wash, rinse, applying a sanitizer, and that's just misting it with a spray bottle and walking away, goes a very long way in killing COVID-19 as well, knowing full well that, again, washing your hands for 20 seconds eradicates the virus. And it's not a foodborne illness. So I'd like for everyone to understand, yes, you can disinfect a food contact surface. I'm going to highly recommend that you do not. Chemical cross-contamination is a serious concern and can make a lot of kiddos very, very sick. So we need to be very, very careful. Now, I realize that the custodial staff in a lot of schools and also the maintenance department or environmental service, they're in charge of disinfecting and they may be going down their own road, but have a conversation with them, your ES managers and whatnot, about what disinfectant they're using. Is it an EPA registered disinfectant on the N list to kill COVID-19? And then are they or are they not going to attempt to disinfect a food contact surface? If they do, they must rinse it thoroughly, or you must rinse it thoroughly afterwards. And personally, I would reapply another sanitizer. Now, one of the things that I'd like to remind everyone as we go into dining room, or this could be cafeteria or even classroom sanitizing, is that, again, chemical cross-contamination can be a real concern. And that disinfectant can, in fact, sit on those surfaces all night long. And as a matter of fact, all day long, right up into the point where some of the kiddos go to lunch. And then while they're gone, we need to properly sanitize those food contact surfaces, because now we're transitioning from a common touch point that needs to be disinfected to a food contact surface that needs to be properly cleaned and sanitized. And I realize not a whole lot of people have time, especially those who are using a cafeteria method and they're not doing in-classroom dining, or whether you're in a cafeteria. But bottom line is this: the federal food code has not changed on this, and not for many decades. So if you didn't have time, if you don't have time for it now, you didn't have time for it before. It's still the federal food code and we must adhere to it. So we have to adapt, we have to change, we have to figure out how we can get this done. And one last point I want to make about dry times. Again, we're talking about a dry time of 1 to 2 minutes for sanitizers and 10 minutes for disinfectants. Regardless of the kill claim on any individual microorganism, we still need the full broad spectrum kill in the efficacy report with disinfecting. So we need to be very, very careful. Okay, so again, even in front of the house, in either a cafeteria setting or in the classrooms, we're going to need an EPA registered sanitizer at label dilution without exception. And of course, we have log charts to test the Sani pails as well. So from here, I would just want to kind of close it out a little bit before we go to some Q&A. Just to remind everybody, do your job safely. If you're not feeling well, stay home. Proper hand washing, proper hand washing, proper hand washing, and just in case, hand wash again. It can never hurt. I personally, in my house, it doesn't feel like I've left the house in 3 months. I'm always washing my hands, even though no new bacteria is being really introduced to me all that often. It's still important. Personal protective equipment, the PPEs, what they're referencing here, is actually listed on the side of every single product, both in English and in Spanish. And we list out what personal protective equipment we suggest for each individual product. And I'm going to remind everyone to follow product label recommendations and dilutions. Don't strengthen it up, don't weaken it, use it at label dilution. Unfortunately, there was a situation out in New England, it was about 6 to 8 months ago, where an individual, and it doesn't matter what restaurant it was, or honestly even what distributor or manufacturer the products came from, because it could happen to anyone, but they were using a very specific type of floor cleaner that would happen to be ammonia based. Works very well if you know what you're doing and you're well trained. Well, this, unfortunately, individual didn't think that this product was working very well and decided to add something else off the cleaning cabinet or shelves and add to it. And unfortunately, that's the same method that they used in World War I against the Germans. It was very, very effective, and it was here. Unfortunately, that individual operator passed away, as well as one individual in the bar area, and 9 or 12 individuals wound up in the hospital. So my case in point is to scare you. The only thing that we mix our products with is water. Hot, cold, lukewarm, fine, but nothing else, just water, okay? And then finally, continue following the federal food code. We are going to properly clean and sanitize all food contact surfaces and properly disinfect all non-food contact surfaces. And I would invite you to take a second, really look around. Look around not only your kitchen, but also your cafeterias, the classrooms, the entire environment, and really start to identify what is a food contact surface and what is a disinfectant non-food contact surface, and begin creating your procedures, your protocols now before they become mandatory. So it's always a good habit. Try and stay ahead of the ball. So with that, I'm going to leave it up to any questions, unless we want to kind of handle that towards the end of the presentation.
Yeah, Eric, we do have a few questions that came in. The first one is a bleach/water solution sufficient for washing and or sanitizing?
Well, a bleach solution at proper concentration can be a sanitizer. It's really not for washing. Chlorine isn't a killer like quaternary ammonium is. It's actually an oxidizer. So it actually changes the pigment of a stain clear so you can no longer see it. So that's the only cleaning action it really has. It's really more of an optical illusion. Now, a lot fewer than people realize, are actual registered disinfectants. And this is where it's very, very important. You need to make sure that that chlorine is a registered sanitizer or disinfectant with the EPA. If it's not, get it out of here. It's not worth getting confused about. That being said, follow label dilution. Am I personally a big fan of using chlorine to sanitize? No. It has its places. Low temp dish machine, even in laundries, that's fine. But it's very corrosive. It doesn't do a real good job, doesn't have great efficacy, and it doesn't have that like quaternary ammoniums, it does not have that bacteriostatic effect, which continues to kill microorganisms for another 24 hours. And unfortunately, and this is my last note on this very long response to that question, and that is, unfortunately, the United States, us Americans, we have this weird sensation that we think if something smells like bleach, it must be clean. And it's not true. So I don't know why we're doing that, when that started, but we need to kind of get out of that habit. To me personally, again, being a professional germaphobe, nothing to me smells cleaner than a room or a surface that doesn't smell like anything at all. Well, that means I'm not trying to hide anything. So hopefully that answered the question. I was a little long-winded, but that's what they pay me to do.
All right. Well, we have another question, and it's more of a clarification that we're asking for. It says, please clarify, the 10 minutes of contact time for a disinfectant is the dry time. The surface cannot be used for 10 minutes while it is drying. It doesn't have to remain wet for the entire 10 minutes.
That is correct. So the contact time for this disinfectant is, or all disinfectants are 10 minutes, regardless of any kill claim on one specific microorganism or another. We're still worried about all of them. And trust me, the list goes on because there's umbrella microorganisms. It's a little bit too much for this particular conversation. But yes, the contact time is 10 minutes. Then thereafter, go for it. But it's a great opportunity now for me to remind everyone that we need to kind of get out of our minds that we have visions of pools and puddles of disinfectant, dripping off the table. No. We just simply mist it with disinfectant or a sanitizer, and we can allow it to air dry. A sanitizer isn't allowed to be wiped up afterwards. A disinfectant most certainly could, but it's unnecessary. Personally, when I get seated at a table at a restaurant and I come in and I sit down and I realize that my table's slightly damp, I'm not upset. And I think that illusion is leaving people as we speak. As we begin to open up our restaurants, people aren't upset. They're actually quite happy that their table was addressed properly before they sit down, including the menus, including the table toppers, the salt and pepper shakers, and alike.
Very good. Thank you so much, Eric. I just kind of have to laugh. I don't know how many people noticed some references to classrooms and students. So Eric has been so kind to do a lot of these for different groups, and we did an education one yesterday. But I mean, Eric, it was a great presentation, and the information is still so pertinent. I mean, for our cafeterias, in our hospitals, in our camps, our dining rooms, and our senior living. I mean, it really goes, across the spectrum, the information that you shared with us. So we thank you very much. And just a note, the interesting thing about the secret is that this is what most of you have been doing all along. So it's just a great reminder of those products and the procedures to help instill the confidence in your staff and your residents, your families, that you're all doing everything possible to keep everyone safe. So thank you so much, Eric.
Yes, thank you.
All righty, I am taking control back, and just a couple of things, resources I wanted to follow up with from HPS. So I'm going to talk about the monthly report. I'm going to talk about HPS Furniture, Finishes, and Equipment, which we affectionately call FFE, the HPS design team, and then PPE and sanitizers with those vendors. So the monthly report is something you receive by email the beginning of every month. So this has a lot of great information. It's going to have new and updated contract it's going to have the HPS related news. And of course, it's going to have our COVID-19 link down at the bottom there, which is constantly being updated with new product, vendors, and information. Okay, if you are not receiving this, please reach out to your HPS representative to get added to that email. There's just so much good information we don't want you to miss. The next thing here is the HPS equipment team. So FFE is your source for all furniture, finishes, and equipment. Our customer service reps have been working with manufacturers on additional resources for food service and patient care during the pandemic, with such things as safety shields and barriers, the two-sided carts to just promote social distancing as your people come through to get food, mobile desk to help separate staff. But for any furniture or equipment needs, please remember to call HPS for help with specifications, budgeting, and quotes on any furniture or equipment needs you have. All right, so maybe some of you don't know this, but we have an HPS design team. It's always been a great resource for designing your spaces in your organization, but now we're especially focusing on helping our members with social distancing with their common areas. This is just to get back to some visiting that our elderly so greatly need, or how about some face-to-face team meetings, which we all miss. So if you need any help reorganizing space, needing new furniture, again, please remember HPS is a great source for this. Okay, PPE. There's always more information on this. You know, at HPS, we tell our members we have a source for just about anything you are going to purchase to run your organizations. And of course, we all know PPE has become even more important than we ever imagined. This is a list of vendors that constantly gets updated as we strive to find our members the products they need at a competitive price. Again, this is the same link that's on our monthly report, in a same link that's on our HPS website. So be going there, be calling us. All right, we are gonna wrap this up. But in closing, so our CEO, Tom Lepre, is a big quote guy. And we all at HPS have come to love a good quote to wrap things up. So today's quote, I believe, is very fitting. We may not have it all together, but together we have it all. HPS is here for you. Please call us with anything you need or any questions you have. And we just all from HPS just sincerely appreciate you and all you do for your communities. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.